Letters to Africa. Chapter 1, A Class Letter. Mr. Wilson asked the students to sit down. He pulled down the world map over the chalkboard. He pointed to Iowa City, Iowa. "We are here," he said, "and this is where our letters will go." His fingers soared across the map from Iowa City to Ghana, Africa. "Ghana is thousands of miles away from Iowa," he explained. "Life is different there." A week earlier, Mr. Wilson had announced that the class was going to be pen pals with a class of students in Africa. Mr. Wilson rolled up the map. He picked up a piece of chalk. He wrote a greeting at the top of the chalkboard. "Please raise your hand if you know what you want the letter to say," said Mr. Wilson. Danny raised his hand. "We are very excited to be your pen pals," he said. Mr. Wilson wrote those words under the greeting. Then Sonia raised her hand. "Is it autumn?" Then Sonia raised her hand. "It is autumn here in Iowa. What season is it in Ghana?" Dear students of Mr. Ado's class. Chapter 2, The Letter. The class finished writing the letter. A student copied the letter onto a piece of paper. Dear students of Mr. Ado's class, we are very excited to be your pen pals. It is autumn here in Iowa. What season is it in Ghana? In autumn, the leaves on the trees become red and yellow. Then they fall off the trees. They crackle when you walk on them. Soon our town will have a harvest festival. People will decorate their yards with pumpkins. Farmers will sell fruits and vegetables. We hope to hear from you soon. Sincerely, the students of Mr. Wilson's class. Mr. Wilson put a letter and a photograph of the class into an envelope. After school, he took the letter to the post office. 3 weeks later, Mr. Wilson's class received a package. They noticed that it was from Ghana. Inside the package, there were photographs, a letter, and many small boxes. There were also some handmade pieces of paper with a starry pattern. Chapter 3, A Letter from Ghana. "Can we read the letter first?" Louisa asked. Mr. Wilson handed the letter to Louisa. She read the letter out loud to the class. Dear students of Mr. Wilson's class. Odziku, that means hello in our language. Our language is called the Ga language. We were very happy to get your letter and photograph. It is the rainy season here in Accra. Accra is Ghana's capital city. We have a harvest celebration called Homowo. During Homowo, we dance, sing, and eat delicious foods. Our school is at the center of Accra. We learn reading, writing, and math in our school. We also study the traditions of our country. You will learn about some of these traditions when you open the gifts we send. Best wishes, the students of Mr. Ado's class. That is a better letter than the one we sent to our pen pals, Danny said. Our pen pals told us a lot about themselves. They also sent us gifts, Noel said. Mr. Wilson's class opened the small boxes. Inside were pieces of bright, handmade fabric. This is kente cloth, Mr. Wilson said. Then Danny had an idea. Maybe we could send gifts to Mr. Addo's class. We could send harvest gifts, Victor said. What are harvest gifts? Oh, what kind of harvest gifts? Mr. Wilson asked. Apple cake, scarecrows, and autumn leaves, the class shouted. Great ideas, Mr. Wilson said. We can send an apple cake. You can draw or paint a scarecrow and some autumn leaves too. Chapter 4, Gifts to Ghana. The next morning, Noel and Danny walked around the classroom. They gave everyone paper, glue, markers, and other art supplies. The students made funny scarecrows and colorful autumn leaves. After lunch, the class wrote a letter to their pen pals. Dear students of Mr. Addo's class, thank you for the wonderful gifts. The handmade paper and the kente cloth are beautiful. We have made some harvest gifts for you. Farmers use scarecrows to keep birds out of their fields. Apple cake is a favorite harvest festival food. We see colorful leaves everywhere in autumn. In school, we study the same subjects that you do. We also have gym class and music class. Our favorite sports are soccer, basketball, and baseball. Sincerely, the students of Mr. Wilson's class. Two days later, the gifts were ready. The class put them in a box. Mr. Wilson added photographs of last year's Harvest Festival. A week later, the package arrived in Mr. Addo's class. The students loved the gifts. They already began to talk about what their next letter to Mr. Wilson's class will be. Mr. Addo smiled as he listened to the students. He knew that the two classes would be pen pals for a long time. Letters to Africa.